The American West, a vast expanse of land that stretched as far as the eye could see, a wild and untamed land filled with rugged terrain and scattered vegetation. From the 1860s to the 1890s, it was a place of adventure and danger. Frontier towns sprang up, filled with people seeking new opportunities. Cowboys drove cattle across dusty plains, enduring long and grueling journeys. Miners dug for gold and silver in the mountains, hoping to strike it rich. Outlaws robbed banks and trains, living on the edge of the law. The law was often far away, leaving towns vulnerable to crime. It was a time where justice was often decided with a gun, in dusty street showdowns. Life in the West was hard, with settlers facing harsh conditions and constant challenges. People lived on the edge of civilization, in rustic cabins far from the comforts of the East. They had to be tough to survive, enduring the hardships of frontier life. But the West also held the promise of a new life, a fresh start for those willing to take the risk. People came from all over to seek their fortune. Some found gold, others found adventure. Many found danger lurking in every corner. The Wild West was a time of great change, with towns transforming almost overnight. Native American tribes were being pushed off their lands, their way of life forever altered. New towns were springing up overnight. The railroad was coming, bringing with it new opportunities and new challenges, and the legend of the cowboy was being born, an enduring symbol of the American West. In the heart of Arizona Territory lay Tombstone, a town that would become legendary in the annals of the Wild West. This boomtown was born in 1877, when a prospector named Ed Schieffelin discovered rich silver deposits. Miners flocked to the area, drawn by the promise of wealth hidden in the nearby mountains. People from all walks of life arrived in Tombstone, hoping to strike it rich. The town grew rapidly, almost overnight. Saloons, hotels, and gambling halls soon lined the bustling streets, catering to the miners and adventurers. Tombstone quickly earned a reputation as a wild and lawless place. Gunfights were a common occurrence, adding to the town's dangerous allure. Outlaws and bandits found refuge in the rugged hills surrounding the town, making it a haven for those on the run. The Earp brothers, Wyatt, Virgil, and Morgan, arrived in Tombstone in 1879, seeking new opportunities. They were drawn by the town's booming economy and the promise of fortune. Wyatt, a former lawman with a storied past, saw potential in Tombstone. His brothers, Virgil and Morgan, had also worn badges and were no strangers to enforcing the law. They found work in Tombstone, but their methods were sometimes controversial, and they didn't always stay on the right side of the law. The Earps engaged in various enterprises, buying and selling mining claims to capitalize on the silver boom. They also gambled and became involved in local politics, further entrenching themselves in the town's affairs. Inevitably, the Earps clashed with a loose gang of outlaws who called themselves the Cowboys. These cowboys were notorious for rustling cattle and robbing stagecoaches, living outside the law. Their criminal activities made them a formidable force in the region. The cowboys resented the Earps' growing influence and saw them as a direct threat to their way of life. This brewing conflict set the stage for one of the most famous showdowns in the history of the American West. The Earp brothers were tough lawmen. Wyatt was the oldest. He was cool and collected. Virgil was the peacemaker. Morgan was the hothead. They were a force to be reckoned with, but they had their enemies. The Clanton gang were cowboys. They were quick to draw their guns. They didn't like the Earps. Then there was Doc Holliday. He was a gambler and a gunfighter. He was also dying of tuberculosis. Doc was Wyatt Earp's best friend. He was loyal and deadly with a pistol. These men were all headed for a showdown. The Clantons and their allies, the McClorys, were a rough bunch. They were known for their violence and disregard for the law. They resented the Earps' attempts to bring law and order to Tombstone. The stage was set for a confrontation. Tensions rise. The feud that led to the gunfight, the feud between the Earps and the Cowboys, had been simmering for months. There were threats and insults. Both sides were spoiling for a fight. Then, in October 1881, things came to a head. A stagecoach was robbed. The Cowboys were suspected. The Earps were determined to bring them to justice. The Cowboys were in town. They were armed and dangerous. The Earps knew they had to act fast. They deputized Doc Holliday. The four men set out to confront the Cowboys. They were ready for a fight. The tension in Tombstone was thick enough to cut with a knife. Everyone in town knew that a confrontation was brewing. The Earps and the cowboys were like thunderclouds about to collide. 30 seconds of terror. The gunfight at the OK Corral. The Earps and Holiday found the cowboys in a vacant lot. It was behind the OK Corral. The cowboys were trapped. There was no way out. Words were exchanged. Then the shooting started. The gunfight lasted only 30 seconds. But it was a lifetime for the men who were there. Guns blazed, men fell, the air filled with smoke and the smell of gunpowder. When the smoke cleared, 3 cowboys were dead. 3 more men were wounded. The Earps and Holiday had won the gunfight, but it came at a cost. Morgan Earp was dead. Virgil Earp was badly wounded. Justice or revenge? The aftermath and the legend? The gunfight at the OK Corral made headlines across the country. The Earps were hailed as heroes by some. They were condemned as murderers by others. The Clantons and McClorys were seen as victims. They were remembered as dangerous outlaws. The gunfight had a profound impact on Tombstone. The town's reputation as a lawless place was cemented. But the gunfight also led to a crackdown on crime. Tombstone became a more peaceful place. The gunfight at the OK Corral became a legend. It was a story of good versus evil. It was a story of courage and violence. It was a story that captured the imagination of the American public. The gunfight lives on in movies and memories. The gunfight at the OK Corral has been the subject of countless books, movies, and TV shows. This legendary event has captured the imagination of generations, becoming a symbol of the Wild West's lawlessness and heroism. It is one of the most famous events in the history of the American West. The gunfight has been immortalized in various forms of media, each retelling adding its own flavor to the tale. The gunfight has been portrayed in many different ways, from gritty, realistic depictions to more romanticized versions. Each portrayal offers a unique perspective on this historic event. Sometimes the Earps are the heroes. They're shown as brave lawmen standing up against the chaos and bringing order to the wild frontier. Sometimes they are the villains. In these versions, the Earps are depicted as ruthless enforcers, blurring the lines between right and wrong. But one thing remains the same. The gunfight at the OK Corral continues to be a pivotal moment that defines the spirit of the American West. The gunfight at the OK Corral is a story that continues to fascinate us. It draws us in with its drama, its characters, and its timeless themes of justice and morality. It is a story that reminds us of the wild and untamed days of the American West, a time when the line between law and lawlessness was often blurred. It is a story that shows us the best and worst of humanity, the courage and the fear, the honor and the betrayal, all played out in a dusty frontier town. The gunfight at the OK Corral is a reminder that the past is never truly gone. It lingers in our collective memory, shaping our understanding of history. It lives on in our stories and in our imaginations. The legend of the OK Corral continues.